Yeah, there's kind of like when you go to the FGC tournaments now, the big ones, they're kids now. There's like parents and their kids, and those parents will root for their kids, and it's it's pretty cool to see. But at the same time, like now it's harder to wear that "suck my nuts asshole" T-shirt, right? Now, if you're wearing
For
that
many
T-shirt,
reasons.
it's a great meme that will be appreciated by everyone that's in the event. But then, well, not everyone, right? There's going to be people that are like, "What is that?" And if they don't understand the meme, that just looks like a very crude kind of thing. And then, like, if your face is on there, it's like, "Well, that's the commenter. Oh, this is what the FGC is about." Like, this is so there's kind of like but at the same time, it's like, well, if you don't get it, you shouldn't be here. Like there might be people who think that. So this kind of goes into the topic of gatekeeping in communities, right? So gatekeeping is a bad. It's kind of a bad word. It has a very negative connotation, and especially in inclusive communities, right? They don't want to see themselves as having any kind of gatekeeping, really. But then at the same time, if you don't have some sort of like special rules in place or whatever for your community, then it loses its identity, right?
Or the authenticity.
And there's obvious certain things within a community where you want to keep. You can't just have somebody who sucks at Street Fighter go onto the top 8 stage, right? You can't. There has to be like that.
People
has to be
there to watch good players.
Yeah, so that actually is a form of gatekeeping. Yeah, you are completely gatekept by the better players, right? And that's
right.
Hopefully that will never go away. But this is kind of one of those things. But then there's a lot of subtle things as well. Like obviously you want kids to come to these events because it's cool and they can see like how especially these days when everyone's on their phones and it's like like they don't have real interactions with real people. Like I think FGC is one of the final vestiges of gaming communities where you can just kind of go to these things and like
you're
actually
in the same
interact
venue
with real
with
people.
all these top players.
Yeah. And so it's really cool. I'm kind of working on a video that kind of touches on that topic right now. But the point that I wanted to get to is that there is a balance that you have to strike between the idea of inclusivity or letting everyone in, but then there's also community identity, right? So there's a difference between everyone's welcome, or pretty much everyone's welcome, but not everyone will necessarily belong until like they start doing things, right? So how do you see that, James?
I mean, it's interesting because for me, and I know I see this kind of differently than a lot of other people, but I've often even said if your only interaction with the FGC is you just sit at home and watch streams all day, you don't even play the game. You just watch it because you liked Street Fighter 2 a long time ago, and it's fun to watch these guys being good at fighting games and stuff like that. You don't go to events. You don't even play online or whatever like that. And you don't even type in the chat. Like, you're just sitting there watching all the time. You are FGC, in my opinion. Like, you are 100% part of the FGC. And in fact, my philosophy of late is that I think the viewers are the most important people right now. My whole mentality is trying to get more viewers into it because I feel like that's where the growth comes from. That's kind of where I've kind of like gotten my brain to. So my whole thing is like, I want everybody. I want everybody to come and play fighting games because, we talked about the kids, right? Like, the kids are enjoying themselves. And then you look at Enzo the Hokage, who's like 13, 14 years old, and he's just beating the crap out of everybody. Craime from Chile was like beating up everybody as well. Yes. And that's what you want. Like everybody. It's kind of like the Ratatouille thing, right? Like anyone can cook, and it's not means that everyone could cook, but like the people who can cook can come from anywhere. And so like that's kind of how I see the FGC is like a player can come from anywhere. A fan can come from anywhere. Obviously, we're not going to appeal to everybody because, I mean, some people are just not going to enjoy fighting games, and that's fine, right? But like they can come from anywhere. So I want it to be inclusive. And I was having this conversation with somebody on Twitter recently too, because like she was saying like it's weird because like you do have to keep out people who are harmful to the scene. So it's weird because like how do you preach inclusivity but you still try to exclude certain people, right? Like isn't that kind of a contradictory? And again, my philosophy has just always been like, everybody belongs. Everybody is allowed to be in here until you start trying to either you're intentionally or unintentionally pushing people away. You know, if you are particularly violent and everybody's like, well, I don't want anything to do with this, so I'm not going to another FGC event again because this guy like raged and like threw a chair or something like that. Like you are actively doing something to prevent people from wanting to keep coming and enjoy themselves. You know, if you are like, hey, obviously this is a topical thing and you know, we don't have to get into it, but like if someone's like, women don't belong in gaming, like you're literally trying to prevent people from coming and enjoying the scene. And so like if you are someone actively trying to trying to prevent people from coming into the scene and having a good time, you are basically trying to exclude people first.
Yeah.
And so that's why you know, that's why you should be excluded.
Because I think
In a way, you know?
the way to deliver the experience that you had to those who haven't experienced yet is very difficult because it'll be my forever homework. And also I guess you guys can also think about it. You guys don't necessarily have to provide a solution because it's kind of philosophical as well, because the idea of where open tournaments, it's very welcoming thing to the FGC, where everybody can enter. You can, you know, rub shoulders with, like, you can probably get matched up with Daigo or Tokido, right? It's what an honor sometimes. People will think, if you're gonna lose, let's lose to Daigo, like, you know, like that kind of thing, right? At the same time, I see comments and posts like, oh, I'm not even good enough to enter, or I don't want to go to an event where a lot of people gonna see me get bodied. That alongside with when we always say, oh, you know, come to your locals or at least go to Evo once in your life. People who experienced it know how fun and engaging and very enlightening it is. Like, you know, people like us, that most of the time it is a positive experience if you liked fighting games in general. But it's so hard for them to, you know, cross that bridge and for us to even pull them into an offline event for the first time when these obstacles exist. Because we understand, yes, losing it can be hurtful. It can be, you don't want to get embarrassed. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the homework that I always have that I can never lay a proper answer to. And I kind of sometimes write like a wall of text. And then I'm like, oh man, this might not be the right way, because some people will never agree to what I say by just saying come and enjoy, because if they have the fear of, man, I don't want to lose, I don't want to you know, be embarrassed in front of people, that's always going to be that mental obstacle.
I think I think the thing that you know, we're running into is, this is like, you know, back at the very beginning of all this, when tournaments and, you know, FGC was in its infancy, it was very much about like the gameplay and playing and the game FAQs and it was very much like there was like a competitive aspect to it. But then like
basically like, if you heard about Valle, you want to beat Valle, you know?
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So that was really all their that was most of it at the time. But nowadays, there's, because of media, there's like you know, there's like content creators, there's you know, there's cosplayers, there people doing like, you know, amazing stuff in like the lore realm with fighting games, and you know, and these are all things like, you know, it just enhances like everything, right? And and you know, I talked to Pat Miller, like even, you know, like, you know, popcorn vendors, and like there are people who are like, you know, there's just like there's a bigger parts of the FGC now, right? And I guess in a certain sense, I mean, it's cool that you're having all these kind of different talents and people doing different things that are coming in. But then there's also the core of it, which is the competitive aspect, right? And this is something that I asked Valle last week was, you know, I guess, like, if you were to see like an extreme form of this, like let's say like 100 years from now in the FGC, like could it possibly be where the competitive side is just something that happens in the very tiny corner of Evo that nobody, you know, really watches or cares about, and then it's just all like
having fun.
Funny like influencers that come, and then they you know they do some funny stuff, and it's like, oh, it's that guy, and then like is there a risk for anything like that to happen? If it does, is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? And would anything like that even happen? And if it does, then what would be the thing that triggers that? Right.
I welcome the coexisting of it, but yeah, I wonder if the power struggle will ever be one-sided ever, whether it's back to the competitive only or the fun only. You know?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts on this, James.
I mean, one of the things that I've always told a story back, like I said, before I was doing commentary, I was kind of part of the Evo staff. Really, honestly, like if you really wanted to name a number 5 person on the Evo staff, that would probably have been Chris Lee. You guys know Chris Lee at all? He's the big Asian guy that's always on the stage and like kicking people and being like the bouncer essentially, the enforcer. But I mean, he also has like really strong business acumen and all this stuff like that. So he was really very valuable in terms of like, helping make decisions and stuff like that. And I remember standing with Tom, I think it was Tom, Tony, and Chris, and the 4 of us were standing there at one of the early Evos before 09, and someone came up to us and they're like, "Hey man, I saved all my money to come to Evo. I'm so happy to be here. Where can I buy all the stuff?" And we were like, because there was no stuff to buy.
The merch.
Like there was literally nothing to buy. And that was kind of the turning point, because Tom and Tony had always been like, it's tournament first. Like even the first years we were streaming, they were like, we'll never stop the tournament for the stream. The tournament comes first. But then you start to realize that, times change and your audience changes. Like people are coming literally to like have the ultimate fighting game experience, and they want to buy things and all this stuff. And so, the cool thing about it is like most of the merch there is going to be, like Artist Alley kind of stuff. And like, I will always be supportive of like all the,
I spent a lot of money on that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, for me, in my opinion, it is the correct thing to go in the direction of becoming more of a convention than just a tournament, right? Because a lot of people there are going to go 0-2, and again, you shouldn't feel bad about it. Like literally,
thousands of people do.
If you have 10,000 people,
yeah.
If you have 10,000 people in a tournament, right? 10,000 entrants. 2,500 are going 0-2. And another 2,500 are going 1-2. So like literally 50% of the players are not going to do better than 1-2. So like you can't even feel bad for losing at a tournament. And, whenever people ask me like, why should I go? I'm bad, like whatever, and all this stuff. And, the important thing is, and this is another kind of one of the things, like I get on these like philosophy soapbox kicks and stuff, and one of my latest ones has really been that fighting games are meant to be a social genre. Like even though it's one-on-one, but if Street Fighter 2 came out today, it wouldn't have worked as well, right? Even if there wasn't other games for competition, because literally playing at home by yourself is kind of not fun, and like being at arcades, even if there was somebody that you weren't actually a friend with, you'll lose to like Vi and you'll be like, but then you see Vi kill everybody else and you're like, well, okay, he's actually good. Like a lot of times when you lose the people on ranked, you're like, that guy's not even good, and stuff. And then sometimes you'll jump off the machine and some person that's just goes to the arcade with you all the time that you've never spoken to will just be like, hey, you do realize that you jump every time he backdashes, right? And you'll just be like, do I? And so like, it's a very social genre in my opinion. And I think the way that we're playing it these days is actually incorrect, being this ranked kind of online thing. But that's why when people say to me like, why should I go to this tournament if I'm just going to go 0-2? Why should I go to my local? And my response to them is always, don't care about your results. That's not why you should be going to the event. You're going there to soak in the environment, to sit in a audience where everybody is cheering for the same thing that you're cheering for, when that never happens, because like a lot of times you want to be like, yo, dude, did you see that Daigo match? And people are looking like, what are you even talking about? But like now you have the opportunity to go to this event where like 1,000 people are in the crowd and they are all screaming for the same things you are. I tell people like when you experience that for the first time, it is transformative.
Mm-hmm.
Like you will not feel that like it will change your life. Like when you go to Evo and everybody's cheering at the same time.
Yeah, it did for me.
Yeah, like and what you're trying to do there is you're trying to soak in the environment, and really everybody says it. Like when they go to their first offline event, they're like, wow, the FGC is really friendly and nice. It's not at all like it is on the internet, you know? And it's like, yeah. And you know, it's also why, like, as a personality in the FGC, I make it a point at Evos and stuff like that to walk around, like during my breaks. I just walk around because I want to give people the opportunity to be like, oh my gosh, hey, James, I can I get a picture or whatever? It's not to feed my own ego or anything like that, but it's like I want to be that representative that, you know, when you see a lot of people have said to me, like, yeah, I met you at my first Evo, you stopped and you talked to me, and like I told you my handle, and you're like, oh, you're on my stream. You even gave me a hug, and like I'll never forget that, you know, kind of things. And, you know, that's what I'm trying to foster, you know, a lot of the times. I want people to come in and see that the FGC is not what you see online, you know, because again, like most people are really friendly, most people are really nice and stuff. And you, so when you go to an event, like it's not to like, and it sounds bad, right? Because a lot of people are like, no, these tournaments should only be about the competition, like, you know, but like I said, 50% of the players are going to go worse than what, like they're not even going to go even. They're not even going to go 2 and 2. To me, it's really important that you make sure that they have other stuff to do and to enjoy it, but also keep it fighting game themed so that they can soak it in and stuff, you know? And so like they can check out the booths, they can, you know, oh, hey, I'm going to the Capcom booth and standing in line. I get to try out 2XKO, you know, I get to see where the fighting game community might be going in the future and stuff. And it's very important for that. The fear that the tournament will become the side thing, right? The side thing. It's a very realistic fear. Okay. Like I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, that'll never happen. Whatever, you know, what are you paranoid? Like anything can happen. And in my opinion, that's a very realistic thing. The only thing that prevents that from happening is, you know, having the right people being the TOs and stuff, right? Because the beautiful thing about the fighting game community, and I talk about this a lot because it is my absolute favorite thing about the fighting community, is that, you know, we have a history. The history of the FGC is completely, God, I don't want to use this word because that sounds weird. I was going to say classless, but that doesn't sound right. There is
it's
no
egalitarian.
Like, yes, there's no class brackets that prevented you from playing.
Yeah.
You walked into an arcade, you put in 25 cents and you played. Like nobody ever turned you away. And so, you know, that's one of my favorite things about the FGC. And, you know, because a lot of the TOs who are in charge right now grew up in that environment, like a Valle, like even Jabali, or like, you know, like Shin Blanco when he was doing Final Round and stuff like that, you know, we try to preserve that. And that is the idea of everybody is, you know, on an equal playing field when you first show up to a tournament. That's why we like the open bracket stuff. And that's why we like having that one person be from out of nowhere, like, who is this guy? They made top 8, you know, kind of thing. And so, like, as long as a lot of those guys are in charge, you know, we can preserve that. And the tournament will always be, like, you know, still be the main focus, right? Even as Evo is basically a fighting game convention, the tournament is still the main focus, right? Like when you promote Evo, it's not like, hey, let's show all the footage of the floor, right? Like you promote it by like, look at this crazy match, look at this crazy match. So like, it's still, you know, still about the games. And that's because the people in charge, I mean, even though, you know, like Rick is in charge of Evo right now, even though he didn't really grow up as much in the fighting game arcade era, but he's influenced by like Keats, for example, right? So Keats, you know, came from that era. And so, you know, the mentality that Keats had when he was running UFGT, he basically passed it on to Rick, and that's why Rick kind of took it over and turned it into Combo Breaker. But, you have the right people passing down the mentality correctly so that a lot of people still understand the idea of you put your quarter up, you can play. And that's kind of what we want to keep with the FGC. It is tough because Evo is expensive, so it is going to cost a lot more money. So it's not as much of the, anybody can, regardless of your, economic state, that you can participate. It is hard now because going to these things are so expensive. But as long as a lot of that old school mentality stays, it will remain as a big tournament. The risk is if some entity that doesn't have any of that knowledge ends up taking over a lot of the FGC.
Yeah.
And this is why, like, when MLG was trying to become the FGC, I was 100% against it. I was always like anti-MLG. I was like, no, they don't understand. They don't get what we're trying to do. They don't get what we're about. So I never wanted MLG's involvement in the fighting game community. But if that ever happens, that is where the danger of an event like Evo shoving the fighting game, the tournament part to the side, because the tournament is not the place that makes the money for the event.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like the booths and, all that stuff is like, oh, Capcom gets to advertise this, so they pay this much for a booth, and et cetera, et cetera. Like, the fighting game, like, if an entity that doesn't understand our history takes over, that can be the scary part.
Yeah,
and
the risk is
a
there.
lot of people have told me, like, James, maybe it's time for you to just give it up because, like, you're broke, you're like suffering in a lot of ways and all this stuff. But like, I'm in a position where this is my passion, and as long as I'm still in it, I will remain, because I will be one of the voices that tries to keep preserving what fighting games are actually about. You know what I mean? Like, I will continue that fight. You know?
This is something that I think the most important point that you're making right now is it's who's in charge of this whole thing. And if it's somebody who doesn't really care about this stuff and is just looking for the bottom line, trying to make as much money as possible, then they're going to make decisions that may end up in this weird, like, small invitational in the corner, and then everything else is not about the competition. And I guess one story that I kind of want you to maybe tell from your perspective that kind of illustrates that, caring about what's going on in the how these tournaments are run and the community. I guess it's funny because I did a video about fighting game input lag, right? And input lag in fighting games is very different than input lag in or just lag in something like StarCraft, for example, right?
Sure.
StarCraft matches, they'll have high stakes matches that are online. They'll just that'll be like an official match with like tons of prize, like tens of thousands, maybe $100,000 on the line, and they'll do stuff in like online stuff. In fighting games, you can't have that because like one frame of lag. Well, I mean, depending on the game that you're playing, you're going to drop your combo and you lose, right? The thing that you train for. So there's this is subtle things like that that'll get lost. I feel like if another entity takes over, even if it's like a entity that's does do esports and gaming, if they don't know these kind of things, that's when people will start getting these really laggy setups. Maybe this 2-player side will have like 3 more frames of lag than the other one. They'll be like, "What's the big deal?" Right? It's like it's a very big deal. Like you go watch the Corey Gaming video on it, right?
Yeah.
But I guess you
make sure you click like and subscribe on Corey Gaming.
Please.
Yeah, I gotta get the max CPM, right? But I guess so. There is a story that kind of illustrates how much Evo actually, how much you guys went through to make sure that something like that didn't happen, right? And I've heard this from I think Tom Cannon talked about it on a panel at one Evo. I was there, and it was it's an interesting story. It's crazy, but I also noticed that James, you were like in the photo. I think you were in the truck of that photo. So I was like, wow,
Yes.
James was I guess you're like you said, you were the number 6 or whatever at the time. So you were
Right.
doing the startup thing, the co-founder startup kind of activity where you're just like, okay, I'm just
Part of history, yeah.
yeah. So explain that to the audience.
This is the Evo East monitor fiasco thing that happened. But, just to kind of toot my own horn, because a lot of people don't know this, right? But like all those photos from that time, those are my photos. Like that, I was the one taking all those photos because I put it on myself because when we first became Evo at UCLA, I was like, we need to document this shit because like if it gets somewhere, we need historical documents.
Yes.
I bought a digital camera. I took all the pictures at UCLA. They're terrible because back then digital cameras weren't that advanced. And then the next year I bought a camcorder and I started filming like literally like I was the first photographer and cameraman of Evo. I just did it on my own. Yeah, I just did it on my own. In fact, if you go to flickr.com/jchenzor, you'll see all of my photos up there, right? Like I just have them out there publicly for everybody to see. So so when this situation happened, and the reason why I kept burying my head was because part of it was kind of my fault.
Oh no. Okay.
So the story really came down to is that, the Evo staff had a giant warehouse of CRTs. And so whenever it was time to run Evo, they were stored in Southern California because that's where, Joey lived and he just had the storage there, and somebody would just drive all the TVs to Evo and then we would play there. But once we got with that partnership with Toyota, they were like, okay, run more events, so we can get more promotions. And so we created Evo East, Evo South, these kind of things like that. And so we were going to Evo East. We're like, well, we're just going to have to rent TVs out there, right? Because we don't have the ability to take all of our CRTs out there because we got to drive cross country kind of thing. Which is funny too, because this guy named Gilbert, who was contracted by Toyota, actually had to drive a Toyota Yaris in a giant truck from California all the way there. So, so that was already happening, to get stuff out there. But what happened was Seth found a group of people that could rent us TVs. And so we rented a bunch of TVs from them. We rented a bunch of CRTs. And then by the time we got there, the company was like, we're so sorry. Like the TVs you booked are not, we didn't get them back in time or something. Like they're currently not available. But don't worry. Don't worry. We will upgrade you all for free into these beautiful flat screen monitors, No. And so all of us were like, oh crap, because this was the time where display lag was really bad, right?
Yeah.
Display lag. It wasn't even the input lag. It was the display lag that was a problem. And so we were like, how bad is it? And so Tom was like, hey, James, try to do some combos on the game. And so I was like, okay. So I went there and tried to do these crazy, C Groove Chun-Li, level 2 super into lightning legs, into fierce, into super, all these things like that. And I did it. And I was like, hey, I think they're fine. I mean, it's just my muscle memory was too strong, I guess, because we were like, cool. And then everybody came in and everyone was like, these monitors are the worst things that we've ever seen. And I was like, oh crap. I'm so sorry. So sorry. But a lot of people at the time were always critical of Tom and Tony, like, oh, you don't care about the scene, you make these decisions, blah, blah. Because, I mean, this was kind of close to when, we went from arcade to console and a lot of people were always mad, that kind of stuff. So a lot of people were always mad at Tom and Tony. So I always like to talk about the story because what they did at this point to fix the tournament was crazy, right? So what happened was that people showed up. One person, I will not name names because they're still in the FTC right now, went straight to Shoryuken.com that night and was like, if you guys haven't made it to Evo East, do not come. The monitors are awful. This is just terrible, terrible, terrible. And literally on the side, Tom and Tony are like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And so they're decision was to call every 24-hour Walmart in the vicinity. And the closest one they found was like 50 miles away, I think. It was 50 miles away. And we were like, well, we have to buy all these CRTs. How do we get them back, right? Like 50 miles away. And this is why I actually brought up Gilbert and the truck, because the guy who drove that Yaris over was like, yo, I got you guys. I will drive the truck and I will carry all the monitors. I got you guys, right? And we were like, yo, you are the man. So like we did this and we took 2 cars to go down there. And again, this was before we all had cell phones and maps and all these crazy things on our phones. And so we're just driving down there. And then, me, Chris Lee, Tom, and I think it was Seth. Yeah, it was Seth. Were in one small car, and Tony and Gilbert were in the big truck. And so we're just following them. And at one point in time, we get off the freeway, we start turning around, and Tony calls Tom on the old non-smartphones and was like, dude, we're lost right now. Like, we have no idea where we are. And we're like, what? And he's like, just kidding. Walmart's right over here. We're like, really? Come on, man. Like,
At this
don't
time.
do that to us. Yeah, and so we go to the Walmart, and literally, like, Tom Cannon goes to the TV section, and the guy comes out and is like, how can I help you? And he's like, how many of these do you have in the back? And the guy's like, we have like maybe 20 something. He's like, we'll take all of them.
Wow.
And like literally, like, yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of like other weird, funny things going on, but I don't want to bog it down with too much weird side stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like they literally wheeling this cart out of like 20 or so CRTs. And like Tom's like, well, credit card, beep, there you go.
Oh my
Like
God.
let's do this. And like, I mean, again, like it's wild to think just like how much Tom and Tony have done for the FGC. I mean, honestly, if it wasn't for them, there would be no FGC right now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't
There'll
even
be
know if
no
there would be a
Evo.
Street Fighter 4 right now.
Yeah.
No Evo, no Sugar. I don't even know if Capcom would have made a Street Fighter 4.
Yeah.
I honestly don't. Like, I feel like the genre would have just like been dead, but like
Yeah.
Evo kind of kept it at least in the interest. And so, but yeah, so like this is, of course, this is already like 2 a.m. or something like that, 3 a.m. in the middle of the night. And we're doing all this stuff. And that's why there's the pictures of me lying on the TV looking like I'm falling asleep, right? Because my sleep schedule didn't suck back then like it does now. Like right now, I'd be like, this is the prime time of my day. We put all those TVs in the truck. And we get in the car and we're driving back and we're like, whew, okay, let's get this back over here and let's set this all up. And then Tony calls us again from the truck and was like, hey guys, the shifting pedal, to change gears on the truck is broken and is like swinging and hanging loose off of the truck right now. And we're like, haha, very funny, Tony. We're not going to fall for this again. What's up?
no.
And he's like, no, seriously, the pedal is swinging and Gilbert is in second gear and now he cannot change gears at all.
Wow.
And we're like, are you kidding me? Like, can this stop happening? And literally there's a toll booth for trucks. They have to stop and like pay a toll and like keep going. But if he ever stops the car, it will never start again.
Yeah.
It won't, because he can't get into first gear, right?
Yeah.
So literally we speed down the freeway in the smaller car, get to the stop, and we pull up and we're like, hey, our a truck that we're with has a broken gear shifter. He can't get out of second gear. Here's his fee. He's going to be barreling through here. We're sorry, but here's the money for him. And they were like, what? And so, yeah, literally, like, they just had to barrel through that whole thing.
Wow.
And then the worst thing about it, and what's funny is that Evo East venue is the same venue that ECT is at right now.
I see.
Which is really crazy because it's a historic thing because it was right next to New York. It was in Stamford, Connecticut. The problem was to get to the hotel. When you get off the freeway, there was seriously like the craziest hairpin turn.
Okay.
Right? That you just could not go through at any sort of speed.
Right.
And so we're like, shit, like we're going to stall the truck there. And Gilbert, the God,
Okay.
made it through that.
Wow.
He did have
The
to
speed
decrease
didn't
it, but
decrease at
he
all?
knew the truck well enough that he was able to keep the speed at a point where he never had to shift to first gear to keep it going. And he actually got it to the front. And it was funny because by this time it was like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. because I remember it was starting to get light all of a sudden. And, you know, we had to now unpack and set up all the CRTs. And, you know, I told you about Chris Lee earlier. Him and the rest of the Virginia crew, shout outs to David Wright and Mike Creaky, they all just happened to pull up because they got stuck in traffic and it took them forever to get here. And they got there and they saw us unloading those TVs, and they had been driving, keep in mind, for over 6 hours and stuff like that, right? And Chris Lee just saw it and he looked at Mike and David and was like, let's go to work, boys. And like they just started helping us unpack all the CRTs and everything like that. And so literally, like the next morning, everybody walked into the venue and everything was CRTs all of a sudden, right?
Nice.
And so we're like, look, for you, like for the guys who are like, don't come, it's like all messed up and everything, we're like, look, we fixed it. This is what we will do. And, you know, and like, I like to tell that story because it really just shows, you know, that kind of aspect that Tom and Tony were the right people to be running this kind of thing because they cared so much about the fighting game community. You know, Tom Cannon wrote one of the first X-Men Children of the Atom FAQs that I'd ever seen. He came up with the term Magic Series. Like, you know, there was a trick in Alpha 1 that Birdie could anti-air you with the little leaping super that we all called the Tom Cannon because he's like the one who made that up and stuff. You know, they were both amazing players and they really cared about the community. And so like, as soon as that happened in Evo East, I mean, like they just were on it right away. There was like no hesitation. They're like, what do we do to fix this? And they did. And
a big thing that comes to my mind is just how thankless the TO role is, right? So there's kind of like TOs have to go through, you know, so much stuff. And if things go well and right, now people are just focused on like, oh man, I'll drop that combo, and you know, like, you know, they'll be salty about something else, right? But the thing is, like, if something, it's kind of like, I don't know if you watch NFL, but the offensive linemen, right? Offensive linemen are, they're the ones that, when you're on offense, they're the ones that protect the quarterback. And that role, and it is basically like, if they're doing their job, like no one really thinks about it that much. But but if they mess up, if the quarterback gets sacked, they'll be like, oh yeah, it's this offensive lineman that screwed up, and that's why they, it's like
it's the chain is only as strong as the weakest link, basically, right? I mean, it's just a personification of that,
and so there's so many different roles, you know, in the FGC to make this whole thing work, and I think like James was saying, there's you know, you got to have people that are organizing this stuff to be into this stuff on some level, right?
There's just one story I want to tell because, like, when Evo was, you know, I mean, it still is the biggest tournament, but like when it was like. At one point in time, it was like, that's the tournament you went to. Then for half a year, no one played fighting games. And then you kind of started up again, you know, kind of thing like that. But like somebody else, another group of guys in Southern California. Well, actually, I'm not going to say where they're from because I don't want to like.
That's fine.
Okay. Don't want to name names, you know, or anything like that. Sure. But a couple of guys wanted to throw a tournament. And they're like, oh, Evo does so many things wrong. We'll show how to run a tournament. They came up with their own like way to run pools and all this stuff. And they're like, this is going to be great. And they're like, and you know, we'll run it so well that there'll be no fires, you know, and stuff. And I was like, dude, running a tournament is not about preventing fires. It's how fast you can react to them. Right. I was like, it's because you're not going to avoid it. Every tournament you ever go to, if you see Rick or you see Jabali or you see any of those guys, you're like, hey, how's it going? The guy's like, oh God, you have no idea. Like I had to do this. We almost got shut down. This stuff happened. Nobody knows. And like, I was like, hey, look, if it's any consolation from my point of view, it's going great, right? And so you guys are doing a bang up job. And like literally after the two guys who were like, oh, we're going to do this perfectly. After they ran it, I talked to one of them and I was like, because a lot of bad problems happened. A lot of logistical problems happened.
Yeah.
And he was like, dude, I have so much more respect for what the Evo guys do now because I had no idea. It would be to this degree.
Yeah, I mean,
and we see that literally right now on Twitter when people are saying like, oh, why isn't Evo just putting all of their money in the pot? And I'm like, dude, God,
Yeah.
do we really? I mean, my famous conversation that I always tell. Sorry, I just during the days of Shoryuken, this was even before we were like this is when we were just starting to stream Evos, some guy on Shoryuken.com was doing the same thing. Why? Look, this is the venue fee. This is how many people entered. This is how much money they have. How come they don't put that into the pot? And I'm like, you're not even like talking about costs, right? He's like, how much could it cost? The venue's probably free if they book enough people at the hotel. And I was like, how much do you think their internet costs? Like, this is going to determine whether I continue talking to you or not. Yes. I was like, how much do you think their internet costs? And the guy was like, well, my internet costs like $60 for a month. So I would assume for Evo, it's probably like $200 for the weekend. And I was like, all right, that's it. We're done.
Conversation over.
Yeah. But this is the thing. Like, there's like a lot of people like on the internet that will talk about something and question some kind of decision or whatever. And yeah, I mean, there's probably some questionable things that happen through game publishers or, even some TOs or whatever. There's always a possibility of that. But the thing is, the organizers and the game companies, you can't tell everyone everything. You can't be like, okay, here are the books, right? Here, I'm just going to put everything on Reddit for the entire books, right?
Yeah.
And then this is every single thing this is where, all the dollars are going to, and this is where, like, it's like you can't do that because that's irresponsible. But then, like, if you don't do that, then people will start filling in the gaps, and they'll come up with their theories, and then they'll try to find out
creative ideas. If you want to do some,
people will get really creative,
but it is very like
So what's kind of interesting is like so I have a friend who's kind of I have a friend who's kind of well known in the I don't want to mention him, but he's probably the most famous friend that I have, right? And
okay.
And this is just to illustrate this example. And I go on, if you go on Reddit about that person, it's just so much stuff is just wrong.
Okay.
It's just like wrong stuff all the time. And then that was when I actually realized, I was like, oh, this is like, people just say wrong stuff all the time, but you can't just go in there as the person and just fix everything.
Yeah.
And of course, people are not dumb, but they're very speculative, right? And then there's just like untrue things that just go unchecked. And I think it's like that with like organizations, companies, and I think this is where it gets kind of they can't do anything about it because the only thing they can do is say, I'm going to withhold judgment because I don't have enough information. But if that was the internet, it wouldn't be the internet, right?
Yeah.
It would never be like that.
Right. I do want to bring up one thing, though, was that one of the first times when people are like, man, TOs must just be making bank and running away with all this money. And you're like, right, yeah. And you said you can't just put out your books, right? John Choi literally did that. He was like, here is NCR's costs and all of our expenses and everything. And he's like, look, did we make a profit? He's like, yeah, I think we made like maybe $300 or something like that. And he's like, and if you take into account the amount of hours of people who volunteered and did all this work, that means we all probably can get like 10 cents or something, like, like it's ridiculously like, nothing. And he actually put out the whole report. He's like, this is like, here's all of our costs. Here's everything that we earned. Here's all this stuff. And he just put it all out there for everybody to see. And even to this day, like people, because I mean, it was a long time ago and, people forget these kind of things or don't know that it happened. But literally somebody actually did that to show that, no, these tournaments are not making money. they're just not,
that's interesting. What did people who saw that, like, what was the response like? I mean, were people being like, whoa, well, wow, I didn't know that tournaments, were so difficult to run like this. And even with people that were volunteering, it's still like, there's not much there. Were people like that, or did people just completely ignore that and just like forget that
Well,
ever
it's
happened.
the internet, right? Like if they see proof, they suddenly disappear.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, in that time, it was Shuriken.com forums, right? Where it wasn't, like the problem with Twitter is like everybody just like goes bleh, and everybody's putting their own opinion. But there were a lot of people who were like, holy crap, I had no idea, so they were like, cool, because, it wasn't like the Twitter social media
Yeah, that's
style.
probably why John Choi did it in the first place.
At least the forums, it's kind of the people that you know and like seen before.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there were definitely some people who were like, well, that's your tournament, but I bet Evo was making like all this money and stuff like that, right? So, it's that kind of thing, and I mean, I don't want to get into some of the things that have happened before. People are like, well, clearly Evo's making money because look at this. And you're just like,
Yeah.
but, you don't kind of understand.
It's the least charitable interpretation of events, right? So the internet now is, whenever there's something that happens, you're going to have people who are hyped and positive. Maybe even like maybe too positive about something, but then you'll also have the people, and there'll always be there, who will always have the least charitable interpretation of what's going on, right? And that's, I guess that's just kind of the reality of it. You just kind of have to like,
I'm going to say one thing here because, I mean, this is truly, like, people don't understand how companies work or how business works because they're always like, well, Evo's now owned by Sony. Sony's rich. Why can't they just fund? And I'm like, every company just has the giant Scrooge McDuck vault that you just walk into and be like, I'll take this for my project.
Yeah.
Like, I was
people
just
think
like,
they have infinite money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's like all these layers of like approval. Like, how much is it going to cost you to do this? Hey, I think we could run it for this much. That's too much. Make it lower. It's like people don't understand that this is how businesses run. And I always say to people like, and this is, again, no knock on Evo because I think Evo is amazing and I think they're doing a great job. Obviously there was the finals, the stands things that was a problem last year or whatever like that. But again, they're trying to fix it. But like, if you are Sony and you own RTS, and RTS is running Evo at this point, right? That's the company that Pokimane is, a part of and everything like that. So, but like, let's say Evo made a crap ton of money the first year they did that, right? Do you think that Sony would see Evo making a bunch of money and go, you know what? Same budget this year, just do the same thing. Like, like every company would be like, whoa, Evo's making a ton of money. Here's more budget, bigger, make more money.
Yeah, if there actually was a ton of money in it,
and people don't understand like how businesses work. Like it's not that hard to understand this thing. Now, obviously, I'm making a bunch of assumptions here because I don't know all the budgets and everything like that, and I'm not going to ask. I'm like, hey, how much are you? Like kind of stuff. But like, just as a person who has been through so much, who has, worked at actual companies and, been part of like the groups that get blamed and all these, like I see how companies work. Like you can see the signs out there, right? I said, if Evo is making that much money, then Sony would just be like, oh, cool, here's a lot more money, you know? And we're not, and again, like I said, I'm not saying like, Evo's not doing, because like from back to back, the 2 years that they've done it now, like it's been, mostly similar. The venue's been a little bit bigger, so maybe they got a little more budget. But clearly, Sony's not throwing money at them, right? Like that's just not happening.
Yeah.
And if it was making that much money, that's exactly what would be happening because no company would be stupid enough to be like, "Hey, we threw Evo. Whoa, this made us that much." Like, let's build this, kind of thing. And
it's a good thing if they make money.
Businesses are.
Yeah. So the nuance of the question is like, why are they complaining that if they're making bank? If they're making bank, it is setting the foundation to be better, right? So they can provide you a better experience. So
yeah. And Jabali has even said this publicly too. I'm pretty sure. I apologize, Jabali, if you haven't said this publicly. But he was like, yeah, there are some years that CEO has made a profit. You know what happens to that money? It goes right into next year.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
You don't see any of it. Like you literally see none of it. And then the next year, all of a sudden, you lose money. And then maybe another year, you barely break even. But like, you don't ever actually get to take any of that home. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like that. So
the stigma of running like the major events, it was like, you were lucky if you broke even, right? That you were so blessed if you broke even, and that's what you pray for. You don't even pray to make profit. You just hope it runs well.
Yeah.
That's the best thing that you can ask for.
And so I guess this kind of brings me to I guess maybe a good last topic, because it's not it's also a deep topic.
Yeah.
But it's
and don't worry, if there's more stuff you want to discuss with us, you can always come back next time.
Yeah, but before that, I want to mention one thing. Sorry to talk over you right there. But
that's fine.
A lot of people don't even realize back when Shoryuken.com was at its peak, like it was literally one of the websites in the world, like one of the top visited websites in the world. Like Shoryuken.com had mad traffic. It was just, and they don't sell anything.
Yeah.
Literally, the cannons were like sinking thousands of dollars every month into Shoryuken.com. And then like when they started adding more advertisements and stuff, and everyone's like, oh, you've ruined the site. And it's just like, dude, come on. Like, like, what do you want them to do, dude? Like, come on. Like, and that weird stigma that if a TO makes money, you're evil. Like, really?
Yeah.
Don't they deserve something? But anyways.
I mean, it's interesting because for every other like profession, it's like, of course that person needs to make money because they're putting in this work. But I guess this is where like you run into the problem of passion versus being able to make a living or being able to make it work for you in your, like, if you are like, I don't know, if you're like a billionaire or whatever, it doesn't matter, I guess, but most people are not. And you have to sink a lot of time into doing these kind of things. That's what passion is. Passion is a kind of a fuel, right? That allows you to be late at night at a Walmart to buy a bunch of CRTs because someone said something on a forum, right?
Yeah.
And I granted that was also the input. Like that is important, but it's it's that's the fuel that allows you to do that kind of thing. But then at a certain point, you end up spending a lot of time and energy into this thing. And that means that's time away from maybe learning a new skill, maybe working at another job or doing other kinds of things, right? And so I think everyone in the FGC is kind of balancing. I mean, there's very lucky people in the FGC that can just do it professionally, obviously. And then there's people who kind of has to be more creative and figure things out, and everything in between, right? There's so I guess like the passion and making it work, like it's kind of a I mean, I think everyone that's invested a lot in the FGC has come to face this thing, right? And I guess I don't know, do you have some thoughts or feelings about this and any like rules of thumbs? Or like,
this speaks to me directly, right? I mean, I have told people in the past, like I remember one time, I was talking to Smug. This was before like he got really super big on YouTube and Twitch and stuff. But he was like, you know what? I'm going to have to take a step away from gaming because I need to go to school, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, you are doing the right thing. I was like, you are doing the right thing because the FGC is like, it's not in a position where we can actually make this a career for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people who are making money are doing it through the content, right? They're not doing it because the FGC, they're doing it because they are good at making content and the topic is the FGC because that's where their passion is,
Sure.
A couple of years later, Smug did eventually, leave school because he got a good sponsor and all that stuff. And he saw me. He was like, yo, James, I just want to say, like, I apologize because I went back on. And I was like, dude, you know what? We're in a different era now. Like this is your chance to do this. Like, so go for it. Go for it. You know what I mean? And I was like, I don't blame you at all. This is the right thing to do. Other people have asked me like, what should I do? And I was like, well, what's your talent? What's your career? Find a way to make it FGC related. Somebody was into physical therapy. And I was like, okay, so maybe what you do is you focus on how posture in chairs and computers and what the different controllers can do damage to your hands, like find ways to make it relatable. But, for me, this topic is really kind of like, a scary one for me because, I am super old, right? Like most people like don't believe how old I am, but hey, Asian don't raisin, let's go, let's go. But I'm still single, right? Like I'm still by myself. I never taken the time to try to find, to start a family. Because honestly, like, I feel like I'm a little really kind of too busy at this. And I was a programmer at one point, and literally I'm pretty sure I was let go because they could tell I was burning the candle at both ends. I would just show up at work being like red-eyed my way back home from the tournament from Sunday to Monday, and I'd just be working, and I'd be like falling asleep at my desk and stuff like that. And so even though I was doing good work, but like obviously my performance dropped off, and so they're like, we're going to have to let you go, kind of thing. And I was like, well, all right, I'll try to do this full time, and I unfortunately, did not realize I had ADHD at that time. So like,
okay.
I was very bad. I was very bad at motivating myself to do a lot of things. Yeah. But, it's just the reason why I tell that story is just an indication of how much time that I really put into the fighting game community. And, the other thing too is that which is really kind of unfortunate, is that my age group is still in that age where a lot of people my age think that video games are a waste of time. They're like, the devil kind of thing. Like all of my friends who are married, their wives hate video games, and they got to do the things where they like stay up after everyone goes to sleep just to even play video games at all, kind of thing like that.
I'm 41, so yeah.
Whenever...
Yeah, I get it.
Whenever I tried to, I still remember one blind date I went on, and she was like, "What do you like to do on the side?" And I'm not gonna pussyfoot around it. Like I'm just gonna get like, I'm gonna be like, I need to know now or never, basically. And so I was like, I play lots of video games, and like you could just see like the blood drain from her face, and like the whole dinner was so awkward afterwards, And I was like, okay, we'll eat. We'll leave, bye, let's move on, and it is hard. It is hard, right? Yeah. So like for me, I've dedicated so much to this, and I feel like I'm just in that wrong generation, like in that perfect transition where it is going to be harder for me to find someone my age who understands gaming, who sees it as something that, oh, cool, that's awesome that you have that passion, like you don't run into that a lot. And so in a lot of ways, I have sacrificed a lot of, things for me, for James Chen stuff, to keep trying to do this, to keep trying to, and honestly, I would tell people don't do that. Don't be like me, right? Like this is something that I have consciously made a choice to do, right? And as a result, I have traveled all over the world. They put me in freaking Street Fighter 6, I mean, this is like, it's like people like, is that a dream come true? And I'm like, no, because I never dreamt that was a possibility, So like in my brain, like it's been so rewarding, going to all the different regions and finding out geek culture is the same no matter where you go, that we just want to play video games, that everybody's just having a good time. And like, I wouldn't trade a lot of that stuff for the world. I mean, I feel bad for my parents, obviously, because I have Asian parents and, I choose to be poor in, we're trying to like, play video games. I always make the joke that like my parents told me, video games are going to ruin your life. And look at me now. They were right, kind of thing, but like, it is tough, and it's a hard, weird decision that I've made to go this path.
But I mean, isn't there like kind of like I don't know, there is, I mean, the life that you've lived is a unique one, and you have become a legend in this community. And I mean, you're part of the game. You're a pioneer, right? You're somebody who's worked up to this, and I mean, this is it's a unique thing, right? I mean, it is easy to get caught up, especially since our generation, video games were that thing, or I mean, maybe still is for a lot of the people. But I mean, if anything, like now it's becoming like, way more mainstream than before. And it's now kind of like it is changing in a lot of ways. And it's, there's something, I guess, that it's kind of like it's a little punk rock in a way. It's a bit, to put it in like a cooler light, I guess. But it is something that's not the beaten path, right? And I imagine at some point when you see how big this has grown, of course, you're known for being emotional, at Evos and stuff like that. It must, you must feel this gratification that it must be intense in those moments, right? It's, I mean, Yeah. How do you
So,
feel?
I mean, when people ask me, when I talk about this, like, oh, joke about video games ruining my life or whatever like that, if anybody asked me if I had the decision to do this, like if I went back in time, would you do it again the same way? And my answer would be yes. Like I absolutely would do this again the same way, because you're right. I mean, a lot of the things that I've seen like mean so much to me, like for example, like to me, this poor kid from the Dominican Republic is now like a celebrity in his own country. They told me stories that he would be in the passenger seat of a car and somebody would drive along in a motorcycle and look in the window and be like, "Hey, Mena," like that. Like everybody knows him from his country. He's won over 400,000 US dollars, which in the Dominican Republic goes a long way, and now he's been able to travel the world. He's super famous and he's got to do all this stuff. I've talked about a lot of people. Like, like one of my favorite stories, for example, is Ringe was always the biggest wrestling fan. He loved NJPW and all that stuff like that. And the year that CEO had the wrestling match there, he got to commentate like a genuine wrestling match. And I walked up to him afterwards and I was like, "How did that make you feel?" And like, you could tell he was like, "Shut up, James, like you're making me cry," kind of thing like that, to have these kind of opportunities, to have these people do stuff and, not to like, bring up like some, sadder topics. Obviously it's good now, but like, if you guys remember, one player in particular, almost ended their own life at one point in time. And then they went on to win Capcom Cup. And like they were able to buy their parents a house, to see their sister, go to their sister's wedding and all this stuff like that. And like, to me, that's just like this is why we do this stuff. What I mean? This is why I want to do this, because I want to be able to give people opportunities that they wouldn't have ever had otherwise, So yeah, absolutely. This whole thing is super gratifying to me, I mean, obviously, people are gonna be like, well, I mean, are you doing this for yourself? Do you enjoy being like a legend and all this stuff like that? I mean, yeah, it's like, it's still weird to me. It's still weird, but like at the same time, like it's cool. But that's why I want to use my voice to try to help get more people into fighting games, and why a lot of my decisions and why I do things have changed, like the commentary stuff where I used to be obsessed with frame data and now not as much, because I realize the audience is different and you get people into the FGC by turning them into fans, right? Like, so the story that I've been telling a lot recently is, at EWC, when Shanghai won, I happened to be sitting in the audience right in front of Shanghai's wife. And Shanghai's wife was just like crying and crying. And I turned and looked at her and I was like, crap. Okay. So I just like grabbed my phone and I immediately went to our staff, like WhatsApp or line or whatever it was. I was like, "Do you want me to get her on the stage? Do you want me to get her on the stage?" And they were like, "Do it, right?"
We saw that on camera.
But like I turned around and I was like, "Oh, Niao Sang Chi," right? Like I in my broken Chinese, right? And she was like, "No." And the rest of the Shanghai contingent was like, "Go, go, go, go." And so she went up there. And, the reason why I was so adamant and I wanted to do that was because it was the story.
Yes.
It was the storyline, right? Because they kept showing her on camera and everything. And I was like, this needs to be the punctuation for the story. Like, this has to happen. And so that's why I was just like so fast, like, shouldn't we do this? And she went on the stage and, all the, they had their moment and everything. And literally, like, on my stream, someone was like, yeah, like, I will be honest with you. Like, I didn't know much about Shanghai, but because of that, I'm now a big fan of Shanghai. And so, like, that's what I want to do. That's why I want to spread the love of fighting games. I want everybody to become fans, right? That's why I want people to, if they watch EVO, when I go to EVO, everyone's always like, "Yo, I'm only in the FGC because of that year you cried, all this stuff and all this, you made me realize how much people care about this stuff." And, that was kind of the lessons that I took out of that is kind of what I'm trying to do, is just try to build, turn people from, "Hey, I like fighting games," to, "Dude, like, fighting games are cool. Like, I will catch as many as I can," kind of thing. And so, yeah, like, going back to kind of the original topic, like, yeah, I mean, I feel like I have done a lot, and I that's kind of one of the reasons why I would do this all over again, because, if I've been able to bring anybody into the FGC, that's the reward for me. That's
yeah. I mean,
when I hear people say I've become a fan and watch, like that's all I really want is just more people to watch and obviously to eat, but that's a whole other story. So
yeah, no, I'm definitely one of those people. I watched you at Evo, and I was inspired, so I count me as one of those people. It's funny. We had an interaction. I think I think it was at one of the Evos, and I think I asked you for a photo. I was just acting like a fan, but then I think you recognized my voice or something, and you're like, "Wait a minute, I'm supposed to want a photo with you." And I was like, What's going on?" James said wants a photo with me, and so yeah, I remember that, and I guess this is kind of your thing of going around and being a fan of the FGC also while building the FGC and all that stuff, and so that's very cool. I guess one last thing based off of what you mentioned about like trying to get more people into the FGC, and I think there are a few people that are more passionate about that than you are. So I'm going to ask you a question that I don't think I've ever asked anyone this.
Okay. I'm scared.
What kind of video would you like to see from Corey Gaming?
Oh, whoa.
Very deep.
Oh, wow.
I never asked anyone this, and this.
Yeah.
Wow,
it'd be very meaningful coming from you, James. Yeah.
That is not a question that I was expecting at all. That is definitely
okay, you can think about it, but if
what kind of video would I like to see from Corey Gaming? I mean, so the reason why I said that, by the way, that I should be wanting a photo with you is because I do love your content very much, and it is great stuff, and it does open the door for a lot of people. So you're one of the people doing more than me in a lot of ways to get people into the fighting game community and interested in it. I mean, you've covered a lot of things. Like you've talked about like the execution skill barrier. That's one of the things that I always like to talk about and stuff. But I mean, I guess like.
Have I covered everything? I guess.
Right now,
is my role done now? Yeah.
I mean, for me, I guess it would just be more of like to maybe talk about some of those personal stories. Like to maybe highlight some of those things that, go talk to Ringe about that. Like Kugi who does a lot of artwork for 10.0 and graphics and, and overlays and stuff like that. He has a wonderful story about like what he did with Nintendo one year for E3, that like, I mean, I can just kind of briefly tell it. Like 10.0 was responsible for running a Smash tournament at E3 one year, and Nintendo and Sakurai are really like they control like you can't do anything with Nintendo without their approval, right? And so they're like, we'll make the overlays for you guys because we have our department and all this stuff like that. And Chris Seglia, who runs 10.0, was like, don't worry, my guys got this, and got Kugi to do it. And Kugi created the overlays and stuff like that. And literally, he was sitting in the room. Sakurai and all these other Nintendo guys just walk into the room, and it's just like, oh my God, this is the scariest thing ever. And they look at the overlays and stuff like that, and they're like, wait, did our guys create this? Because this is like exactly what we wanted. Like, this is perfect.
Nice.
And like for Kugi, like that was like a moment for him. Like, oh my God, like Sakurai was just like, did our company create that? And to have that kind of an experience, so like there's just so many people who tell, I mean, when Kusanagi, when he won UFA and he was like, I pick Ryu because that's who my dad played, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm like crying, kind of things. And like, maybe just to highlight a lot of the human aspects of the fighting game community. I think would be really cool to see, honestly. And again, that's not to say that, like I said, all the stuff you're doing right now is just, it's phenomenal. And I don't like, I used to make all the Evo trailers and combo videos and all these things like that. And so I know what goes into editing, and I am a perfectionist. And so like, I'm the kind of person that will never finish something because like I'm never satisfied kind of thing. And like, I can't even process how you end up making a lot of those videos the way that you do, with like the footage and like the right footage cutting in there and making the jokes and just like having the right reference thing come in there. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even know how you even,
That's why it takes like 6 months to make one video.
honestly.
Right?
Right. Like I said, I don't even know how you even finish some of these videos sometimes, because like I swear to God, I would be like, oh God, no, that's not quite what I wanted.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like
No, I have dead projects.
I get so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Dead project. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
I have
like,
them too. Yeah.
I have like 4 videos I want to make right now, and I haven't started any of them. So, you know, so, but yeah, I mean, so again, like I love your work. I think it's just fantastic. I'm actually like
Thank you.
legit jealous about like some of the things that you do, like with the videos and stuff. Cause I'm like, oh, that's so clever. Oh, that's so cool. And so, again, I love your content. But, you know, maybe trying to like highlight some of the human aspect would work, you know, the human aspect of the FGC.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to explore there, and you know, I do love traveling. When the Pakistan video was one of my favorite projects to work on, and that was way closer to the people aspect. I definitely do want to do more of that, and I'm going to try to find excuses and ways. A lot of this FGC stuff is finding an excuse to go to a lot of these events, and you know, my parents live in Texas, that's where I'm from, and so whenever I go to visit them, I buy a plane ticket to Las Vegas and time my Evo trip. So it's always like you know, it's a family trip, but then it's kind of like so. So yeah, I kind of like the Pakistan trip was basically that. There was a reason for me to go that was not related to the YouTube channel. And it just like it worked out. So it's
dang.
Yeah, like I don't know. This is how sometimes you have to do it, right?
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people
Right,
like they're in the
uh-huh.
FGC are doing it that way. It's like it's hard to justify going across the world for, you know, a tournament sometimes, and and it costs a lot of money. But like if you can find those hacks, right? So it's you know, like yeah. So
You gotta like squeeze in that.
Basically, we're fighting game players. We take advantage of the bugs.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
That's what we do.
Pretty much.
yeah, basically, you got to find the tech.
People call it bugs. We
Yeah.
call it tech.
Yeah.
A big difference.
Yeah,
This is called
exactly.
tech. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yo, James, thank you so much for your time. This actually, you know, the whole conversation was so valuable, and it was so great to just hear you impart your wisdom and your experiences, and of course, it's
really
been a great
great.
podcast, and we might have to split this one into 2 parts, I think.
Yeah, and we are very grateful, right? Like to be the outlet where you can share your story, and of course, probably in the near future, we could invite you once again. I do want to say also, like, when we discussed just then about the ratio of the competitiveness and the fun aspect of that. But if you think of, like, I'm not going to say, like, I found a solution, but it did enlighten me where, like, if you think about all these, video highlights and, like, the stuff that goes on social media from Evo team are all clips and videos of the competition. And then if that itself is enough to draw in people who just want to be, you know, comfortable in the casual space, do your cosplays, do your artwork, are all encouraged to come. I think that's already a good start where everybody can kind of coexist in the same universe.
Yeah.
And lastly, the thing about how, you know, people are always talking to you that you're the legend, you're the OG. And even for myself, one of my first trips to the US to go to a tournament and be able to play on the stream stage once. And the first American commentator who commentated my match was you. And I treasure that so much.
Okay.
I'm like, James Chen commentated my scrub match.
No, people
against this guy. I'm
Yeah,
like,
I don't know if you know this, James. I
Yeah.
know there are people that if they go on stream and you're commentating, I know that there are people doing the same thing that Kevin.
I
So there's
and then
people
I come
that,
back home, back to Australia, and like watch the archive. Obviously, no one clips the match of Burnout Fighter because he's some random scrub. So I have to go through the entire 12-hour VOD to find my match, and I have to clip my own section of me playing like a scrub. And I'm so honored that every time I replay it, it's
I
your
hope I was
voice.
nice. I hope I was
You
nice.
are very
at least.
nice to me. Thank you so much for not calling me out. Oh, this guy's some scrub from Australia.
Yeah, no,
You did none of that, so that's great. Thank you.
yeah.
But I treasure it every time I go back to my old archives. Back in like the early the 2010s, all the way like to somewhere in between the end of Street Fighter 4 to the Street Fighter 5 era. Whenever your voice is in my clip, it's like a cool thing to me. It's like me finding or seeing the wrestling superstar kind of feeling, right? Like I'm very starstruck.
Right.
So just want to say,
Thanks.
yeah, thank you. And this is a funny take where now when I try to introduce Street Fighter to maybe the newcomers or who are in the fighting game but never play Street Fighter, I kind of want to tell them, oh, you should play with James Chen's voice on. It's gonna be a cool experience for you. I want to do that to some of the newcomers.
Oh man.
Let's go.
So
Let's do that.
you're very
Oh,
you're symbolistic to the FGC, I believe, and I hope you
thank
continue
you,
to
thank you. Appreciate
nurture
that.
your art.
Appreciate
so
that.
yeah,
Awesome.
nice.
All right.
This doesn't have to make the cut, but I do want to say that reminded me. You know, for the longest time, like when I was in Australia playing Street Fighter 3 and 4, I thought your name was JC Henzor.
Oh, you don't know the meme. You don't know the elite hacks memes.
For the longest time.
Yeah.
And then later I hear his voice on like commentary. I'm like, oh, his name is James Chen. That's why it's J Henzor.
Yeah,
I was
it's the Hacksaw meme, right? That's like Remember
The
that?
very first time I heard that was actually from Mike Ross.
Oh,
like
really?
Mike Ross, when first time I met him, he was like, I actually thought you were originally JC Hensor. You know? And I was like, really? And then I've had a lot of people actually tell me that now. Yeah. So
now we know. Now we know the real name.
but just so you know, the lore, I mean, you could splice this in if you want to at any point in time. The very first thing I did on the internet was I was a big They Might Be Giants fan, which is a really weird, like, geek rock band from New York, right?
Okay.
And so the very first thing I ever did on the internet was join a They Might Be Giants, like, newsletter kind of thing, news group. Everyone would talk and they would send you an email with what everybody was talking about. This was before forums and all this stuff like that.
Yeah, they did
And,
the
they
Malcolm in the
just came
Middle
out-
theme song, right?
Yes.
That's that
Yes,
band.
they
Okay, I know
did.
that band. Yeah,
And- And at the time, they just released an album called John Henry, and one of the songs on there was about a Belgian World War II era painter named
What?
James Enzor. And so, like, I was like, oh, the song was called Meet James Enzor. So when I joined this They Might Be Giants group, I called myself James Chenzor.
Oh, that's
See,
the origin.
puns even back then.
Yes.
Even back then. And so then UCLA, I was at UCLA when they created their first email system for all the students. It was the first time all students got email, but you were limited to an 8-character name. So I shortened it to
Oh,
Jay
that worked
Chenzor.
out. Nice.
Nice.
Yep. And so that's how I became Jay Chenzor. And yeah, I accidentally named myself after a World War II era Belgian painter. And I've seen his paintings at the Getty Museum and taken pictures with them. So
Were they
That's
nice
the
paintings?
origin.
Were they at least nice paintings that you will approve?
oh yeah, they're good paintings. I mean, they're a
Okay.
little abstract, but they're definitely good paintings. So yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
cool.
I'm gonna put this in. Yeah, this is a cool story.
No, we should
All right.
definitely. This could be a short. Yeah.
Make that a YouTube short. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So there
Shorts
you go.
material approved.
Yes.
Did you? I mean, is there any like point where you want me? Like, should I like try to plug some of my stuff or anything like that?
Please do
like
so.
my streams and everything.
You can give a
Yeah.
short shout out to
Okay.
people you want to mention, and as well as
Okay.
if people want to find you, you can tell us that too.
Sure.
We'll make that as the ending
Okay.
of the show.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Go ahead whenever you're
I
ready.
mean, one of the nice things is that I gave myself a handle that like doesn't exist anywhere else. So Jay Chenzor, I'm like Jay Chenzor on everything, basically. So on Twitter, I'm Jay Chenzor, and then actually I lied because on YouTube I am on Ultra Chen TV. However, I will be trying to change it to Jay Chenzor very soon. But I've been trying to work really hard on content. With Gerald is, like I said, one of my inspirations for content over here. So I'm trying to go real, like give it a real, like go at it this year. So please take a look for that. Again, youtube.com/ right now it's Ultra Chen TV, but I'll let everybody know when it switches to Jay Chenzor. But other than that, on Twitch, I'm on Jay Chenzor as well. I like to educate people, fighting game stuff. I really try to cater time to beginners and stuff. Like some people will ask me a really beginner question, and then like an hour later and 7 training mode examples, like I'll have going like, does that make sense? And they're like, dude, like, thank you kind of thing. So so if you follow basically anytime you want to find me on socials, it'll be under Jay Chenzor. So
all right, well, I guess it's probably pretty late for you, and I don't know, maybe it's not late for you. I don't know what your hours are like, but
not for me anymore.
Yeah, can we say that? See, us creative people, the perfectionists. Why are we so creative late at night? It's a funny phenomenon.
Oh man, yeah,
I hate it.
Yeah. Well, okay. Thank you so much, and I guess we can we'll end it here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We'll wrap it up here.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Okay.